Francis Ford Coppola had just made The Godfather and Apocalypse Now. He had the money, the trust, and the freedom to do anything. So he built a fake Las Vegas indoors and bet his entire career on it. Here are the crazy facts behind One from the Heart. 1.
That I want to operate in a kind of new kind of cinema that's a more theatrical cinema.
After The Godfather and Apocalypse Now, Coppola had earned something most directors never get: the freedom to do whatever he wanted. The studios trusted his name and money was flowing in his direction. But instead of playing it safe, he did something almost no one in Hollywood would dare to do. He decided to fund One from the Heart through his own studio, Zoetrope, which meant that every creative decision, every dollar spent, and every risk taken came directly back to him personally. What could have gone wrong? Everything. And eventually, it did. Without a studio absorbing the risk, Coppola was the only one standing between the film and financial disaster. So when it failed at the box office, it hit him directly and forced him into years of commercial projects he never wanted, just to get back to stable ground. One film shifted the entire direction of his career, and the financial decisions that made that risk possible were already starting to spiral. 2.
When you do something a little different from what you're used to, you never know exactly how to do it. You kind of discover it as you work on it, and it tells you how to do it.
At the start, this wasn't supposed to be a massive production. The idea was a contained romantic story with a strong visual identity, something intimate but visually distinctive. But the moment Coppola committed to building everything inside a studio rather than filming on real locations, the costs started stacking up fast, and they never stopped. Every single scene required custom set construction. Every lighting setup had to be designed from zero. Every technical system being used was experimental, which meant constant testing, adjustments, and delays before a single usable frame was captured. The budget climbed to $26 million, almost impossible to justify for a romantic film in 1980. And it was not one big decision that got it there. It was hundreds of small ones that never stopped adding up. 3.
He called this the war room.
These are the ultimate sound stages, everything you could possibly.
Here's where things get genuinely crazy. Instead of flying a crew to Las Vegas and filming on real streets as any other director would, Coppola decided to build the entire city inside Hollywood sound stages. Not just a few rooms, not just a couple of street corners. Neon-lit roads, casino interiors, airport terminals, and highway stretches. All of it physically constructed from scratch inside a controlled indoor environment designed to exist only in front of a camera. And the interesting thing is that Coppola never intended for this version of Las Vegas to look real. He wanted it to feel like a dream version of the city, the kind of place that lives in memory rather than on an actual map. Every structure had to be imagined, built from scratch, and constantly adjusted with no real skyline or natural light to reference. What audiences saw was never a location, it was an illusion of a city that never existed. But rejecting real locations wasn't just a logistical choice, it was a deliberate creative philosophy. 4.
Gone out the window because, he kept building more sets.
Most productions, when costs start rising, will find a middle ground. Use some real locations, mix in some studio work, and keep the budget from completely spiraling. Coppola went the other way entirely. He didn't avoid real locations because he was forced to. He chose to avoid them because he genuinely didn't want them. His whole idea was that the world of this film should feel emotionally real rather than physically real. And you can't get that by simply pointing a camera at an actual street. So everything was built, placed, and lit with intention. But when you remove reality completely, every single frame has to be created from nothing. And every moment becomes a construction project that never ends. The film stopped operating like a normal shoot and started feeling more like building an elaborate painting, one frame at a time. 5.
14, 13, 15. More or less editing the movie with the spatial representation.
One from the Heart looks unlike almost any film from that era, and that was entirely by design. Cinematographer Vittorio Storaro didn't approach lighting the way most cinematographers do. He wasn't asking what the scene looked like in reality. He was asking what emotion each color should carry inside this world. So the film operates like a shifting emotional map. Warm tones appear when characters feel close or emotionally open. Cold blues and deep shadows take over when distance or tension enters the scene. The same location can look completely different depending on what the characters are feeling in that moment. If you're enjoying this, subscribe right now because the next fact is where things get really weird. 6. By the time filming wrapped, the production was already under enormous pressure. But Coppola didn't choose a simple editing process either. Instead of standard film editing methods, Zoetrope Studios used early electronic editing systems, technology that was experimental, unstable, and nowhere near ready for a feature film of this size. Editors were sitting there watching simple cuts take hours because the system kept failing on them. Every time a sequence needed fixing, the whole process slowed down again, and every single delay was costing money on a production that was already bleeding cash. What was supposed to be the future of filmmaking ended up making everything slower, harder, and more expensive on a production that was already falling apart. And somehow, the editing process wasn't the only thing Coppola decided to turn upside down. 7.
What I want to do, I think, is I want to walk around while I'm listening to the soundtrack, walk around all of...
This is the part that most people don't know about, and it completely changes how you understand the film. Normally, a director shoots the movie, edits it together, and then brings in composers and musicians to score what's already on screen. Music reacts to the film. Coppola reversed that entirely. Tom Waits and Crystal Gayle's songs were written and recorded early in production, and instead of serving the film was built to serve the music. Scenes were cut and timed to match songs that already existed. Emotional beats in the story had to align with musical beats that were already locked in. Even the pacing of transitions between moments was shaped by sound rather than by visual storytelling. The music wasn't supporting the emotion on screen, it was generating it. The actors were performing inside a rhythm that existed before the camera ever started rolling. 8.
So as soon as I get up, we can have a confrontation there. But it's good that
Their feelings had to be real, but the world around them was entirely artificial. That was the strange reality every actor on this film had to deal with. The artificial city, the controlled lighting, the design environments, all of that had a very specific effect on the people who had to actually act inside it. Actors normally use their surroundings to help shape a performance. Real weather, natural light, the small unpredictable details of a real environment, these things help ground emotion in something concrete. But in this film, none of that existed. The surroundings were entirely constructed and completely controlled. There was nothing accidental, nothing natural, and nothing that behaved the way the real world does. And all of that pressure, the artificial sets, the experimental technology, the music-first structure, eventually came crashing down when the film finally hit theaters. 9. When One from the Heart finally reached theaters, the reaction was far quieter than anyone involved had hoped for. The film didn't connect with audiences, and financially, it performed far below what it needed to just break even. With a budget as high as it was, even a moderate success would have been a stretch. What it got instead was a major commercial underperformance that created consequences nobody could ignore. Up until this point, Coppola had been moving towards something rare, genuine independence as a filmmaker, with the ability to experiment freely and push boundaries without needing studio approval for every decision. After this failure, that phase of his career was over. The financial pressure forced him back into safe commercial projects just to survive, and the experimental chapter never reopened. This film drew a permanent line in his career that separated everything that came before from everything that came after. One from the Heart proves that the biggest swings don't always land, but they always make the best stories. Drop a comment with the next film and subscribe so you don't miss it.